Welcome back for the interactive discussion component of the morning, where we are joined by a special guest, also a good friend of ours, Ribal Al Assad. I'd like to say a few words about his background before we begin the interactive discussion. Ribal Al Assad is the founder and director of the Organization for Democracy and Freedom in Syria. He is an international campaigner for democracy, freedom, and human rights. Ribal, who's now 36, was born in Syria and has lived in the West since being exiled from his country as a child. He brings new ideas and perspectives to campaigning for democracy and freedom in Syria and the Middle East, and is a regular speaker on political and human rights platforms. Ribal regularly interacts with politicians, civil servants, academics, journalists, think tanks, pro-democracy, and human rights groups around the world. Ribal is also chairman of the Iman Foundation, which promotes dialogue to strengthen international understanding and coexistence through the exchange of ideas, people, culture, and religion. He is extensively involved in promoting interfaith dialogue and relations between Muslims, Jews, and Christians around the globe. Over the last years, Ribal has successfully been involved with helping to tackle interreligious conflict and violence in Lebanon. One of his notable achievements was to help facilitate a rapprochement between the Alawites and the Sunni Muslims in northern Lebanon. Ribal studied politics at Boston University and holds a degree in business studies from the Inter-American University in New York. He's fluent in Arabic, English, French, and Spanish, a keen sportsman with a special interest in Thai boxing, Shaolin Kung Fu, swimming, and tennis. Currently lives in London, and I must say I'm really happy to have you here again, Ribal. I mean, Ribal is really one of the strong opponents, let's say, of the current regime in Syria, and has really put his life on the line many times, and actually had already several assassination attempts luckily survived. So really somebody fighting, literally, in the strongest sense of the word, for human rights on a daily basis. So we hope we can continue that tradition today. Unfortunately, the times are continuously getting more difficult for you and for Syrians, I think, which underlines the importance of your work all the more. So I'm really happy to have you here with us today. Maybe we could give a brief welcome also for Mr. Ribal Al Assad. Really happy to have you here, and I think it's also a perfect link also to the conference that we're having, Russia and Europe, the Russian-European relationship. If there's one issue that Russia and Europe don't agree on, of course, it's Syria right now, where it's been very difficult to really get the collaboration going. So I wanted to begin this discussion with a question on Syria, maybe towards Ribal, and then I'd like to immediately try to open this up, also make this an interactive discussion. I have a few questions prepared, but I really want to take your questions, also your comments. First of all, also for Ms. Ojuland, who just gave an excellent lecture. I'm sure you have many follow-up questions for that, as well as also we can make use of the opportunity now to have Ribal here. So I'll begin the conversation with a question on Syria. The title for this discussion is actually the European-Russian relationship with reference to the crisis in Syria. And the first question is, Ribal, what are your perspectives on the February 2012 Syria resolution, which was vetoed by Russia and China at the United Nations, while the other 13 members voted in favor? Are you for military intervention in Syria? What are the positions of the EU on this matter? Are the long-standing issues between the EU and Russia affecting the resolution of the crisis in Syria? And if we have a microphone also, maybe Darnell? Ribal.
Yes, thank you very much, Mark. It's always a great pleasure to be here at the ICD. And let me start by talking about what's happening in Syria. Regarding the resolution that was vetoed by both Russia and China, I honestly think it was very understandable at the time. We have to understand also Russia's interest in the region, and what Russia and China's relationship with the West and the United States. To start with, we all know that there is a Russian-U.S. kind of deadlock now going on over the U.S. missile shields in Europe. And we cannot view the situation in Syria separately in if we don't look at these other issues going on, both between Russia and the United States and NATO, and China and the United States and of course, and NATO. People often, when they talk about Syria, they talk about Syria in isolation. I mean, they don't take into effect that Syria is not an isolated country. It's not in the same situation than Libya. Syria has many allies in the region. You cannot look at what's happening in Syria without looking at what could happen also in Lebanon, with allies that Syria has, for example, like Hezbollah and General Mishair Aoun, the Syrian National Party in Lebanon, the Ba'ath Party in Lebanon, and others. Also on the other side with Iraq, like the Sadr militias, Al-Maliki and all pro-Iranian alliances, and Iran, of course, with Al-Quds brigades and others. So you see, it's not that as easy, you know, and Russia and China are very aware of that. That yes, of course they're not backing, they're saying that they are not backing the regime in Syria, but at the same time, you have to take into considerations what could a military intervention lead to in Syria. You know, they are trying to tell the West, that you have to be very careful. This could lead to chaos, actually. President Assad at the time, he came out a few months ago in a newspaper and he said that if anything happens against Syria, there will be an earthquake all over the region. And a regime such as Syria, who knows very well that if they're going to go, they are ready to take the whole region with them. And they're ready to create chaos. Let's not forget that Syria has half a million army. They have over 5,000 tanks. They have biological missiles, which they moved towards Turkey in broad daylight, and they were picked up by US satellites. So it's not as easy as people are seeing it. This is what we're not understanding, that people are not given a chance, for example, to the Kofi Annan plan. And also, let's not forget that today we cannot, I consider myself as a person who live in the West, as part of, you know, those countries who really believe in democracy. And I'm very sad when I see sometimes a duplicity or kind of hypocrisy in treating with, what's happening in different areas of the world. 20 years ago, it could have worked because there was no internet, there was no television channels, satellite television channels. So you could, each media was really read only or viewed only by the people in that country. For in the UK, they had television channels which only were viewed in the UK, in France the same, in Syria the same, we had only one television channel. But today, you have television channels in English that are Russians and, like Russia Today. You have Iranian television channels in English, like Press TV and others. So you see, people are able to check themselves what is happening, how there is a duplicity in working. As I always say, if you are for democracy, you have to be for democracy everywhere. And if you are for human rights and freedom, you have to be for human rights and freedom everywhere. You cannot just say, oh, it's specific or selective to a certain country. And this is what we have to be very careful about today. Again, when Secretary of State, for example, Hillary Clinton came out before the Friends of Syria meeting in Tunisia a couple of months ago, she came out and, what she said was really amazing. She said, we need an all-inclusive, democratic, peaceful change in Syria. And just a few days later, at the Friend of Syria meeting, this is not exactly what happened. They only invited one group of the Syrian opposition. How is that? That proves or shows how democratic was that. While you have several groups who were not even allowed to participate, our group was one of them, which sent a delegation there. They were not even allowed near the conference area. So that was hardly inclusive. And this opposition group that was invited to Tunisia were mainly the Islamists, 80% Islamists. And some members of the Syrian National Council came out and said, yes, unfortunately, we are 80% Islamists. So we came out and criticized what happened at the Friend of Syria meeting, and then we had a Friend of Syria meeting in Turkey a month later, and they came out and said, they again invited only the Syrian National Council, excluding all other opposition group. And not only that, and they decided also that they should give salaries to the Free Syrian Army. So that shows you again how this is hardly peaceful, as Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said. Because when you give salaries to the Free Syrian armies, it's inciting again to more violence. It's creating an army against another army. And this was just a week after the Kofi Annan plan was announced, which everybody, the international community came out and backed the Kofi Annan plan. If you back the Kofi Annan plan, you have to act by it. All sides have to stand by it. They have to back it. And this is what, again, we're having today, is that it's a great, Russia and China, again, come back to Russia and China, they they want to change. They have backed the Kofi Annan plan, but they also see that on the other hand, there is a duplicity in dealing with certain countries, and they said it openly. We don't want what happened in Libya to be repeated in Syria. China. Let's not also forget that China has their own problem with the U.S., including the pressure that the United States was putting on China regarding its currencies, regarding for what China sees as a policy of encirclement by the United States. With the base opening in Australia and courting, Burma, and so they have their own issues with the U.S. And again, this is what's very worrying, is that we are very worried that there will be proxy battles fought starting in Syria that would escalate all over the Middle East, and that would be very difficult for anybody to put down that fire at that time.
Thank you very much for those insights. I'd like to maybe ask a follow-up question to Ms. Ojuland, coming back to Europe. To what extent are Russia and the EU involved in the Syrian issue? How does the crisis in Syria affect European-Russian relations? And what role has Russia played in trying to solve the Syrian crisis?
Well, the Syrian issue is, of course, on daily agenda in the parliament and also in EAS, in the External Action Service. Catherine Ashton is very much involved in this, and at the same time, of course, this raises huge concerns. It's not only about the concerns are not only about to find the solution, but it's very much concerns about these violations and these thousands of deaths which are behind this story. And this is very, very much a European concern, that how to get out of this situation, that to stop the killing. And as we just heard, the interests are so clashy there, and I think that in the West, including the European Union, we may be too less educated, really, to put this picture together to gain back the peace. And I think that the position at the same time is clear from the EU side that President Assad should leave. It's impossible, and he should face the international court, the justice, and the regime should change. But yes, as you were critical that if the West comes to assist to help the change, then we are quite weak. And I can say that apart from my group, again, what we are doing, how we can now participating to try to solve the situation, is that we created a special representative position. The person is residing in Cairo, in fact, but this person on behalf of ALDE Group has the task to establish the network between the secular political forces around the region. It's not only about Syria, but also in the other countries in the region and in the Northern African countries. We had recently a meeting at the end of March in Barcelona, where from every country there was one person representing their opposition and the secular opposition, starting from Morocco, ending up with Syria. So, and we are planning now the next meeting in June together with them, just to assist in building, this liberal democratic party networking. This is the concrete things what we try to do, at least, and I'm personally involved in this also. As I said, I'm spokesperson on EU-Russia relations, but I also happen to be a spokesperson and a shadow rapporteur on Libya.
Before you give up the microphone, just a quick follow-up. Last week, Russia and the European Union circulated separate draft UN Security Council resolutions to authorize the deployment in Syria of up to 300 more ceasefire observers. How will the observers help resolve the crisis in Syria? How can a peace process be reached in Syria in light of the support from Russia, the EU, and the USA?
Well, perhaps it's too difficult question for me, really, because as a parliamentarian, I'm not really involved in such a high-level policy making between the big major international players. as a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Parliament, of course, we are meeting with Catherine Ashton on a regular basis, and his office people, and they are, of course, briefing parliamentarians. We can ask the questions, but frankly, this is a very specific question, what perhaps the members of governments or the executive bodies of the EU could be much better persons to answer. So just frankly, I wouldn't be able to get to give you a proper answer on this.
Okay, well in that case then let me give the same question maybe to Ribal, if you'd like to ask that. And in addition, the final question I have for you, and then I want to give the microphone to you, you could maybe respond in the same way. Does cultural diplomacy have a role to play between the EU-Russian relationship and also with regards to Syria? Is there anything that cultural diplomacy can do in this very difficult situation?
First of all, let me say that I welcome the deployment of those UN supervisors in Syria. It's very important, but the problem is that their job would come to nothing if there is not a ceasefire from all sides, from both the government and the parties who are supported by some Gulf countries, including Saudi Arabia and Qatar. The problem, again, today we have to understand is that there is a big sectarian drift in the region, between Iran and the support for the Shia Muslims, and between Turkey and the support for the Sunni Muslims in the region. So today, unfortunately, the whole region is divided on sectarian lines. Countries in the Gulf have started television channels. One of them is based, for example, in Riyadh, and another one in Cairo, and they both incite on religious hatred. They both incite on violence. You have clerics on Safa and Wisal TV daily calling jihad on minorities, including saying Shias are infidels, Alawites are infidels, and this is today. I mean, the situation is chaotic, and it's very difficult to sit again and have a diplomatic, dialogue when sectarian issues. As you know, in religion. Religion is very different from politics. In politics, we could fight one day, we could criticize each other's, we could, have a big disagreement, but the next day we could sit back on a table and everything could be resolved. Unfortunately, in religion, it's not the same, and mainly in Islam. And in Islam, once you say about someone, about another person or another Muslim or another, or Christians or Jewish or whoever, that he's an infidel in Islam, they have for extremist Islamists, they have to kill him. So it's very difficult. How would you sit back with people who have called you an infidel and they have called jihad on you? Like the Chief Justice, the former Chief Justice of Saudi Supreme Council, Sheikh Al-Luhaydan, at the beginning of the uprising, he said that I called jihad on the Alawites in Syria, even if 2/3 of the Syrian population dies. This is hardly acceptable. This was not condemned by anybody, and this has scared all minorities in the Middle East. Again, just a month ago, you have the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia who called on burning of all churches in the region. And he said it's a duty of all Muslims to burn the churches in the region. Well, could you again imagine for all the Christians who have suffered in Iraq, who had to run away from Iraq, to Christians who are living in Syria, who are 18% of the Syrian population, to Christians in Egypt and all over, what the feelings that they're going to have. Of course they're going to side, not because they are pro-dictatorship, but because they are very worried of what's the alternative. If this regime dictatorship, bad dictatorship goes, what's the alternative? Would a theocracy be better than that regime? Of course not. If you look at the Iranian Revolution, for example, they took out a dictator, the Shah of Iran, to be replaced by, theocracy, by the mullah regimes. And is it better now today than, you should ask Iranians yourself. Is the regime today, is the life in Iran today, 30 years after the revolution, is it better than it was under the Shah of Iran? I don't think so. You see, this is where, why it's very difficult today to try to resolve the problem. And I always warned from the beginning that you have to be careful how to deal with the Syrian issue, because this could lead to a civil war, and this could easily lead to a regional war. And this is what we're afraid of today, is that it's really looking like that. A year ago, the Iranian regime would never come out openly and say, yes, we will back the regime against whoever. Well, a month ago, Ayatollah Khamenei told Minister Erdogan that he will defend the Syrian regime. He said it openly. The Prime Minister, again, of Iraq, Nour al-Maliki, who a couple of months ago was, again, he was kind of never openly saying that he will back the Syrian regime. Today, indirectly, he's telling Turkey, stop intervening and creating sectarian conflicts in the region. You know, so this shows you that everybody is showing their cards today. Before it was a taboo subject to talk about sectarian issues or in Islam and sectarian conflicts, but today everybody is talking openly about it. And this is why there's a great danger in that. The problem in the international community and the West, everybody, okay, wants to stop the Iranian nuclear program. We all understand that, and we all have, I mean, the whole Middle East, not only the world, the whole Middle East is worried about the Iranian nuclear program. But at the same time, is the solution to just rush in and try to create chaos in the Middle East or create a regional war just to get rid of this, you know, we call the ghost or, you know, the Iranian ghost? Is that the solution? Well, honestly, I don't think so. I think there's only thing that it has to be a diplomatic solution. It has to be, a lot of people ask me, what could we in the West do? I always tell them, what does it mean? What you could do a lot. Instead of backing one party, you could easily bring all opposition groups, create a conference, which we were trying to do, I think, a few months ago with Mark here, and have a conference, invite all groups, and unify the opposition, you know, and see that, and make sure that this opposition genuinely believes in democracy. Because a lot of people today are trying to play to the Western gallery, and they say, yeah, we believe in democracy, and most of them, they don't know what it means. A lot of members of the Syrian National Council, who are the Muslim Brotherhood, 80% of them are Muslim Brotherhood and Islamist, have lived over 30 years in the West. But you come today and ask them, what does democracy means to you? A lot of them think that democracy is about elections or about votes, which is, it's really not. You know, they don't know that it's respecting minorities, it's about religious pluralism, it's about human rights for all, it's about everybody are equal under the rule of law. They don't understand that. They think the majority will come, they rule over the others, and, you know, will kill all the rest. And you could see it from their website in Arabic. One of their members, who has been living in the UK for over 30 years, he writes that, I wish there's an earthquake that would kill every Alawite, including their children, their babies, their mothers, their elderly. You know, that's scary. That this is extremely scary. And when you see that these are the people that are backed today by the whole international community, well, this is even scarier. We want the international community to unify the opposition, and then peacefully to corner the Syrian regime, who is saying today, oh, we are ready for dialogue. We know very well that they cannot have dialogue, because dialogue or reforms for them means their end. But at least they're saying it. Russia and China are saying, you know, the Syrian regime is ready for dialogue. Why don't we unify the opposition and let's have dialogue that will be supervised by the international community and move towards democratic transition, move towards national unity government, move towards pluralism, and then we'll, you know, the next elections are in 2014. You know, we have to, I mean, this issue could only be resolved in that way, in that manner, in diplomatic manner. Militarily, it's going to be chaos, and it's going to bring disaster. And this is where I think cultural diplomacy could play a role, is trying to bring those people together. You know, bringing people and listening to what people have to say. Minorities who are terrified today in the Middle East, but what could be the alternative? People have seen, for example, what happened in Tunisia. People have seen what happened in Libya. People have seen what happened in Egypt. Okay, the dictatorship is gone. What happened in Egypt today? You have the Muslim Brotherhood who won the first, you know, they're the first party in parliament, and then the second party are the Salafis. You know, what about the 10% of Coptic Christians? What about the moderates who went out, you know, went out during the revolution and were filling Tahrir Square? What happened to those people? Just because they were not organized? They couldn't get, they couldn't be represented because they were not organized, because they were not able to organize under the previous regime, because they don't have economic backing from countries. Because as you know, countries in the Gulf are only willing to back Islamists. And money plays a huge part today. Again, in Tunisia, it's the Islamists who have won the elections. And in Libya, the NATO strikes came, and then they left. And they left people now on the ground to decide their own fate. They armed everybody. The Qataris armed everybody. And okay, great. Now, pro-Gaddafi, against Gaddafi, all tribes kill each other. And this is disastrous. Now we could see some, I think there was a region, the Benghazi region, they have declared that they want to have an autonomous region in Libya. And unfortunately, this is a region where all the oil is. So this is going to create greater conflict. You see, this is very, very difficult. We are in a very difficult position today all over the Middle East. And if the international community doesn't come and, as Mark said, and cultural diplomacy needs to play a role into helping all groups, groups who genuinely believe in democracy, all secular groups, and it cannot be just, as you said, man, just one person representing each country. It has to be, there's many groups in the Middle East. There's not one person who could represent Egypt or one party that could represent the secular groups in Egypt. Why? Because they were never able under President Mubarak or under the dictatorship to organize themselves. You have to open the way for everybody, for all people who believe in real secular regimes to come along. They need training, they need to learn how to build civil society, they need to learn how to build democratic parties, and they don't have that training, unfortunately. This is very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, that took longer than I had planned, but I think it was very important, actually, the insights that you both gave us. I really appreciate that. What I'd like to do now, though, is take maybe a tour of the room. I'm sure there are many questions here, far too many probably for the time, but let's take maybe 5, 6 different voices, in particular the Russian participants. We didn't have such a chance to hear from you today. Maybe we could have the Russian participants first. I'd love to maybe take a brief, let's say 30 seconds comment or question from each of you, and then I'd ask maybe each of the panelists to offer responses to those questions or points that are relevant to you.
Thank you. My name is Konstantin Leshenko. I'm from St. Petersburg State University. I would like to raise a question to Ms. Ojuland. Thank you for your presentation. My question is going to be about small differences. There's a couple of books considerable in Russian literature named What to Do. And if I try to summarize your presentation in that sense, what to do, it is like impose sanctions, foster democracy through all the possible means, and, well, try to not align with the existing Russian regime. On the other hand, as you indicated, there is a distinction line between the economic way of things are going and the political way of things are going, because economists and businessmen clearly consider Putin as a more stable person to talk to. We can indicate it like the rise of stock index of Russian RTS and MMVB after Putin's been elected again, like defreezing of economic activities in Russia after he came to power again. And nevertheless, these were, of course, not democratic elections. We can all say that. But then again, if I can remember 1996, when Yeltsin was elected again, that was even less democratic elections than it was by now. And the question of differences is like the attitude of a European Union and the countries of European Union to the situation. Because I can remember my parents sitting in front of a television and nearly praying for communists not to come back. And it was clear to all, because Yeltsin had a rating about 6% 2 months prior to the elections, and then he's been elected. Nearly everyone understood it was falsified. Nevertheless, no reaction from West, no reaction from Europe, nearly not that big. Now there is a big reaction in the attitude to this election that happened, and not least back in the opposition parties that are clearly being led by even more corrupt people that are in the power of Russia right now. There are a lot of instances. And we can consider backing of Alexei Navalny from the National Endowment for Democracy from the US, for instance. They none of the Russian person who knows that would really appreciate this, of a man coming to power, being backed from US or whatever from outside. And you can consider also these people, the leaders of opposition, going to US embassy to have some consultations just a couple of days before the elections as well. I don't want to name personalities, but believe me, all the representatives, all the opposition parties, whether represented in Duma or not represented in Duma, they were there. So the question is why these small differences of the attitudes of the West towards what's happening in Russia? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kimberly. I'm from The Hague, the Netherlands. And I also have a question for Ms. Ojuland, because you said that it is an aim of the European Union to have sort of a do-over of the elections. But many political scientists, for instance, Levitsky and Way, and also others who are really specialized in Russian politics, they think that it was not so much the fraud, but the unequal television coverage that was the main influence. So what would be the time frame if, for instance, Parnas participated? In what time frame would you want to have new elections? And what are the expectations that they would really have a majority or not? Because many Russians do have support for Putin.
Thank you. Who would like to go next?
I have a question also to Madam Ojuland regarding your quote about the European Union wanting to put the human rights issue more up to the agenda when speaking to the Russian Federation. And my question would be, is it really realistic to say that the European Union had and would take into consideration alternative suppliers of natural resources? Because, yeah, that's the question. Thank you.
My name is Hannah and I'm from Ireland. My question is to Mr. Ribal. I'm wondering how you spoke about like a democratic and peaceful understanding in the Middle East and how important it is. So I'm wondering how this would be possible or how realistic it is when Iran can be argued as so undemocratic, with in particular in the 2009 elections. So I'm wondering what your opinion is of the future of the region and Syria, with Iran's grasp on Syria in particular.
Thank you. I'm Ashot Avdesyan from Yerevan Center for Democracy and Peace. As we know, there are big, huge, even Armenian communities in all over the world, and especially Iran, Iraq, Syria. There was a small one in Libya. So my question for both of you, and I would like to see kind of guaranteed answer for those communities, churches, and whatever there. What's the guarantee from the West for those minorities in those countries? And the second one, to Mr. Ribal, what's the perception of local opposition powers, like you are representing, towards those small minorities and their role in all this situation? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's say ladies first, Ms. Ojuland. Okay.
This is always ladies first, especially when it comes to the answers. Okay, well, yes, I agree. In '96, these elections of presidential elections, they were not fully fair elections. These are reported in all reports in OSCE, in the Council of Europe. I was observing myself those elections in Russia in '96 as an observer from the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly, and we fixed it. Of course, these were not fully satisfactory elections. But at the same time, it was the time when Russia was acceding to the Council of Europe. And then I would say, at least in the Council of Europe, there was the expectation that when the country is a member of the organization, still there is a perspective to learn democracy, to become a democratic, to implement the common values and common rules. And still the time of Yeltsin, or the period of Yeltsin Russia, this was still very high expectations in the West that Russia may become a democracy. They may make mistakes, but still, even if that was well, the problem with the with the fair competition, still there were expectations that something can be changed with the help and assistance with West and international organizations like the Council of Europe. And yes, and nowadays Russia. What I think that, as I said, it's absolutely changed. It's a different regime. It's not like Yeltsin time regime. It was chaotic and there were a lot of problems. But now this regime, the Putin's regime, is absolutely different one. It's very strong and it's very hungry to really keep their power, not to leave it to anybody through the democratic elections. And this is the major difference. And speaking about the leaders, I agree with you that the old opposition leaders, and you will meet the one in these meetings also soon, I don't also have high expectations with them. Of course, they do their job in the moment, like Mr. Kasyanov, Mr. Ryzhkov, and Nemtsov. But what I think is really Russia would need a new leader, younger generation leader. There are some young people, maybe they are too young, like Yashin and Navalny. Maybe he's not really a politician, but Yashin is definitely. That is not only about the leader who can take people behind himself, but also the program, the political program. And even the old leaders now, I would say, they still lack the clear political program and vision to what they really want to achieve. It's not only enough just when they say that Putin should leave the office. They should have the vision for the country and for the people. So now, yes, the time frame for the new elections. What European Parliament and other international organizations have said, it's not only European Parliament but also OSCE has said that Russia needs new free and fair elections. We cannot set the timetable. We have said simply as soon as possible, but I'm quite pessimistic. I don't think they will have a new elections. Or as the ambassador of Russian Federation in Brussels, Mr. Chisov, said to me when I asked him in other hearing in the Foreign Affairs Committee when he had a meeting with us, I asked when you expect that Russia will have new free and fair elections, and he said, just be calm, we will have next elections in 5 years. Which is pity, of course, but still, I think that Russian people, those who came to the streets in December and February, and I guess that now before the inauguration in May, there will be another wave of major demonstrations. Still, there are so many people who are not backing Putin. If you say that yes, Putin is broadly supported. Yes and no, because if there were free and fair presidential elections, I'm not really sure if he could make those elections in second tour. If, for example, Yavlinsky was led to the elections, then I would say that even Yavlinsky is not the person who is gathering the opposition in the moment behind his back. But if that was the case in March, that he had a chance to go to the elections, he could get, in my view, a lot of votes of those who were really against Mr. Putin. And basically, Russian people didn't have a really relevant choice between to choose. They didn't want to choose Zhirinovsky or Chuganov. It's clear. It's history. Yesterday's day. So natural resources, the alternatives. I think that the situation in general is not that bad. I think, frankly speaking, this little bit probably changed the European policy planning when in Libya the situation has changed because I think that there was some planning to get more alternative resources from the Middle East, including Libya, by the way. But there is also Turkmenistan, with whom the European Union has been negotiating, and always the question of, again, on the one hand, like it's quite similar, like with Russia. You need the natural resources, and at the same time you face this very unpleasant situation with the human rights, the lack of democracy, and this is the reality. But nevertheless, just to spread the risks between those countries like Russia, like Turkmenistan, or some other countries in Arabic world who are not democratic, we don't have any other way out so far. We need this natural gas and oil. And as I said, we are just also, as you know, the EU has this plan 20-20-20, which means that 20% more efficiency in energy use, 20% of using more alternative resources, energy resources, etc. So it's like a parallel process with what EU is dealing, and of course with these all electricity cars which are now running in our streets, I guess also in Berlin, and some more alternatives. And last but not least, what kind of guarantees Europe can take for the minorities in the Middle East? I don't see any real guarantees. What I can say that we guarantee this or that or this. I think that what happened, it was the Arab Spring. What happened, it was mysterious, really. Also, that it happened so fast. It was backed by so many people, especially young people, and such a high hopes were up there. And it's now, I think, it's very difficult to understand where was in which moment really the momentum was lost. To really build and guarantee that the democracy is taking place instead of this what we have seen now in Egypt, for example. It was a big, of course, unexpected development, I would say. And at the same time, speaking Tunisia, you see, Tunisia has succeeded to get much in better situation. I think in Tunisia the minorities are not under the threat. So it shows that still it is possible that the Arab countries are not a priori undemocratic. Nobody is born as a democrat, and then many countries, even in Europe, people can learn democracy. My own country, who was living 50 years in the totalitarian system, I was not taught as a Democrat when I started to work for Estonia. We are all learning, and that means that also there is a perspective in Arab world. In Tunisia, they are doing this. Is a good model, good example. And I very much would like to agree with you what you said, that maybe it's really it's very central to focus to have a more closer dialogue and teaching, trying to teach the leaders of democratic and secular opposition to be prepared to take over and to bring democracy on your region in these countries. It's not about taking sort of European values necessarily there, but it's about the freedoms and democracy, human rights, which are universal, should be universal.
Let me first answer the question about Iran, what to do about stopping Iran from what they're doing. Well, the solution, I don't think that the solution is to divide the region on sectarian lines, because that's what would be really chaotic and disaster. That would bring disaster to the whole region. You know, the problem, as you know, as I explained before, a lot of minorities live in the Middle East. The solution to countering Iran would be to promote all democratic parties in Iran, in all over the Middle East, genuine democratic parties, to promote them, to help them, to educate them. There's many ways. It's not the only way is not to just create sectarian conflict, because then that nobody would be able to stop it, and it will be much worse than having just Iran having their nuclear program. Of course, would be disastrous. But to create sectarian conflict, it would be really a disaster, because that would include all the countries in the Middle East, from North Africa to the Middle East to Iran. It could even drag Pakistan. It could drag Muslims from all over the world, and this is really, really dangerous. China is very worried about it because, as you know, they have problem with Muslims in China. Russia is worried about it because they had problems in Chechnya and Dagestan, and there were many Al-Qaeda members sent there. The same in Afghanistan, the same in India, and if you've seen the last bombing that happened in India. And so all the countries in the area are really worried about Islamists coming to power. The way to defeat Iran is certainly not by creating another Islamist entity to fight Iran. That would be, as I said, very, a disaster. Iran, yes, controls a lot of things because they use the Shias, the Arab Shias in the Middle East, to say that we are here, the champions of the Shias, we are here to help the Shias in the Middle East, in Iraq, in Lebanon, in Syria, and in Bahrain, in Saudi Arabia, all over. Yes, but the solution is not by creating, as I said, another force saying, oh, and we are going to back the Sunnis against the Shias in the Middle East. The only solution, as I said, is to bring real, genuine democratic forces, that will be able to change. And there are many Iranians, who are pro-democracy, as we have seen a few years ago. But the problem, those Iranians who went out in the streets of Tehran and all over Iran, they didn't see real support. They saw a bit of support in the media. Other than that, they didn't see a lot of support. And again, the same in Syria. For the past years, there were some democratic parties. But again, they didn't see any who tried, to talk about changes and democratic changes, like ourselves. I used to run the Arab News Network, which is the first television channel in the Middle East to promote democracy and freedom in Syria and all over the Middle East. We never saw or met anyone who was willing to support us or any other democratic parties. When our house got bombed in Latakia in 1999. A year before Bashar took over, there was all over the Western media was backing Bashar al Assad. Nobody came out and said, how many people died in that house in Latakia? Where did these 250 people disappear at the time who were there? There were 50 women, 200 men. Nobody talked about it. Everybody followed the regime's version at the time, who came out and said we attacked an illegal port belonging to Dr. Ribal Al Assad, and everybody just followed. It was the Western media who gave a lot of support for Bashar al-Assad. There were the British media and other Western media who said Bashar al-Assad was British educated, he was a reformer. If you remember at the time, Secretary of State Madeleine Albright went to Syria and she, showing support for President Bashar. You had also Prime Minister Tony Blair, you had President Chirac, you had King of Jordan, King Abdullah, who was a very close friend of his. Saudi showed support for him. The Qataris were supporting him even through Al Jazeera in the media. So this is what really happens, is one day they support a dictatorship, and the other day they switch and start supporting Islamists. There's no middle ground. As I said, the alternative to a dictatorship doesn't have to be Islamists. They could be democratic parties, and they have to be, not only they could be, they should be the democratic parties who have been suffering from those dictatorships for ages. Just they were not able under dictatorship to organize. Islamists were able to organize because they use the mosques, they use to meet and to organize themselves. They use the funds, the Islamic funds, to fund their activities. While other democratic parties are not allowed. You've seen in Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood were very well organized. They were a very strong party, even under Mubarak. But other parties, democratic parties, whenever they would try to go to the street or whenever they tried to oppose the regime, they were all put in jail. They were all arrested and put in jail. You know, the same as in Tunisia, the same as in Libya, the same as in, you know, in Syria, everywhere, really everywhere. That's the case, and unfortunately. And on the question about Armenians, this is again the mistake that the West did, is delegating their responsibilities to Ankara. You know, we all remember under the, and all Syrians, all Middle Eastern do remember, under the Ottoman Empire, you know, how many minorities they killed. Christians, you know, Alawites, Jews, Shias, and many others. They killed many, you know, hundreds of thousands of minorities. So it was very, I think, naive from the West or international community to delegate the responsibilities to Ankara, who had the first opposition meeting in, and they have created actually where exactly the Syrian National Council was created. It was created in Turkey, and it's 80%, as I said, Islamist. So of course that there alone you are creating, I mean, animosity with the Christians in Syria, 18%, because as you know, Armenians are also Christians. And all Christians usually they tend to, you know, to stick together, which is normal. You know, they, as I said, they have all suffered under the Ottoman Empire. Again, the Kurds, who are around 20% of Syria, again have felt that they have been excluded, because the Kurdish certainly they don't think that it's Turkey who's going to try to help them get democracy and have a pluralist Syria. So that's together Christians and Kurds alone are like 40%. And then you have, of course, other minorities who, again, same as the Alawites, who have suffered a lot under the Ottoman Empire, and we had over 100,000 killed. They were killed by, it was known as the Khazouks of Sultan Selim, you know. And all the minorities in Syria and the Middle East do remember that. So it was, I think, again, it was a big mistake to delegate that to Turkey, and it is, it has forced all minorities in Syria to side with the regime without really believing in it. People should know that Christians, Alawites, Shias, Sunnis, Druze, everybody in Syria, everybody in Syria wants democracy. Nobody could believe that anyone in the world wants to live without democracy or without freedom. You know, this is, as I said, these are universal values. God created us free, so everybody feels that this is, nobody could take away from them. That's, you know, freedom. But at the same time, they do not, as I said, they're very worried what could be, there's not a viable alternative, because we have a very, we have an Islamist opposition, non-inclusive opposition, non-unified opposition, and an opposition that's honestly very immature and it's very undemocratic. I mean, how helpful could it be, after what we have seen what happened in Iraq, to have Syrian opposition come out and say, you know, we want this Ba'athist regime in Syria out. You know, I don't know if some of you know, but in Syria we have over 2 million Ba'athists, you know, who are part of the regime, and Ba'athists are from all sects, from all religions, from all ethnicities, you know, and they are Ba'athists not because they believe in the Ba'athist principles, but because usually you get, you know, if you are Ba'athist in Syria, you are the first to get a job, you know, and they should have learned from Iraq, you know, when they invaded Iraq and they told the Ba'athists, you know, they dismantled the Ba'ath Party and they dismantled the armed forces. This is the chaos that you know, we've been seeing in Iraq for the past 10 years. And this is going to be again repeated in Syria if we don't learn from our mistakes and if we don't include everybody. We have to tell, you know, we have to convince the people in Syria, all minorities, all sects, all ethnicities, all religions, including the Ba'ath Party, including people who are in the regime, that don't worry, you will be included in a democratic system. You will all be included. You know, there wouldn't be any sect who will be you know, there wouldn't be any revenge taken against any sect or against any religion, against any ethnicity, against any political party, or against any people who are who have served in this regime or the previous regime. You know, because if not, those people will stick, and this is what they have been doing. They have been sticking with the regime. They have been sticking and fighting, not because of the love they have for Bashar al-Assad. It's just because they are defending their lives and their interests. They are very worried about the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we're out of time, so I'd like to ask all of you to please join me in expressing our sincere gratitude to both of the panelists for, I think, a very thought-provoking discussion. Thank you very, very much.